Hello everyone and welcome to today's show. I'm joined by a special guest, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, the former Conservative MEP who was obviously in the European Parliament during the whole Brexit saga. So we're going to talk about obviously what's happening with the Brexit trade talks, what's happening in Dover with the whole illegal migration and everything, kind of the latest updates. So welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. How's that whole lockdown stuff treating you?
Well, having just had a baby, I was planning to be pretty quiet anyway, but it's even quieter. I feel for people who are stuck on their own. At least I've got my family around.
Oh, how old is your baby now?
12 weeks.
Oh wow! Well, congrats. I hope the easier time. Well, apart from the crying, and it's going to get worse.
Yes.
um,
Few sleepless nights.
yeah, brilliant. No, it's fine. Yeah, so obviously, I'm sure you've seen over the last week or so. There's a lot of issues near Dover with the migrant boats coming in, and now we've just discovered that the French Navy are actually escorting the boats towards Dover.
Is that a French naval vessel has been seen escorting boats out of French waters to get them into British waters, then they're off their hands. So the big French naval vessel now has gone, they've done their job. They've escorted that little dinghy on the left there into British waters. They've now left their own rib off the big vessel just to make sure they're safe until the handover to the border force.
What do you think is actually happening there?
I think that both the French and the British are trying to act in their own interests. The French don't want a huge build-up of migrants on their side, and we don't want them to come here illegally either. However, the behaviour of the French is outrageous, and they have a legal obligation to provide safe harbour for those that have made it to France and are therefore safe if they are being persecuted in any way in their home country. And they have the legal obligation to prevent them coming to us. We have the same on our side, and they are not behaving responsibly, and we should really take them to task. And it all gets very tied into the whole European Union agreements on free movement and our decision to leave the EU. Mm-hmm. And I think in one respect, it's probably partly a penalty to us that they're allowing it to go so freely now because we've left, and that wasn't popular over in the EU.
Yeah, and I think because obviously we weren't even in Schengen in the first place anyway. So do you think that the Home Office and the border security have to kind of act now, or if we just wait till the end of December, will it automatically change in terms of the border rules? Or
I think we should have always been very strong on this, that we had no obligation to take anyone who had already found safety in France, whether they had real need or not. It wasn't our problem, it was the French problem. We should have let them deal with it. We should have made sure that there wasn't free access to our waters or to our country. Unfortunately, that has all got blurred with the EU's preference for free movement and our more substantial relationship with the French. The whole Calais thing obviously was ongoing for a very long time and caused real difficulties and tensions. But we have to look after our people, our country, and the world's best interests. And the more that migration is encouraged and allowed, the worse it's going to become for countries across the entire world.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the biggest problem we have is that I don't really have kind of complete faith in the Home Office in terms of the civil service side of it, because I believe, like Priti Patel as Home Secretary, she wants to do something about this, and she's trying her best, obviously, but it's not as easy because everything's bureaucratic, isn't it?
Everything is, and this is clearly tied into international relations as well. It's not just a Home Office thing, but I think you're right. The Home Office has been subpar on protecting our borders, and that's across the channel, but it's also at our airports. We know that checks didn't go on as they should have done. We know that there are potentially millions of illegal immigrants in this country that the Home Office has no idea where they are. That creates a culture of below the radar operations, illegal working, and is really damaging to the future of our country. At the same time, we do have a duty of care to provide a safe haven for those who need it. There are plenty of countries in the world who have deeply oppressive regimes where people cannot live freely. And that is a responsibility on us to make sure that not only do we support our own systems for law, but allow others access to those when they're in desperate need, but not for everyone who just wants to make a quick buck on the British economy.
Yeah, and absolutely, and also through the legal way. We have kind of relationships with certain camps across the world, and people apply and then they get sent here. But if you're already in France, then I don't understand why. It's a weird problem.
You're meant to stay, and it's the problem that Italy has had in so many of its coastal towns and islands, and indeed southern Spain, let alone Greece and the further east in Europe. But I think it's really crucial that we make sure those laws are upheld and that we are seen to be a beacon of doing the right thing, but the right thing is not allowing everyone to come in. And I actually think Nigel Farage has been doing very good work highlighting quite how bad this crisis is. Yeah. And it's got to be something that the public are made aware of. It can't be hidden under the carpet, as I think it has been for many years. We've got to know what's going on and we've got to be willing to deal with it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, everything goes back to the Brexit situation and especially the trade talks. How do you think it's all going? Obviously, do you have faith in the process, David Frost and the team in terms of negotiations?
I think David Frost has been a breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. That for once we're actually having a British viewpoint put across to our friends and neighbours across the Channel, and that is very crucial. That up until Boris Johnson taking over, there was no desire on the British side to really fight our corner. And what was the point? You can't have a trade negotiation negotiated by one side. Mm-hmm. And we were just kowtowing to everything the EU suggested or asked for. And that was never going to work in our interests. Mm-hmm. The whole point of Brexit was to provide our country with sovereignty. That was the number one issue on every doorstep. Mm-hmm. And every Leave voter I know. We've got to make sure we have the right to make those decisions, and David Frost seems to be putting that across quite clearly.
Yeah, and because you mentioned it's all obviously about sovereignty and self-determination, yet the European Union side, until just a few days ago, Michel Barnier kept pushing for fisheries access without any kind of requirements. Do you think that was just a bluff in the negotiations, or is he actually scared that the countries like France and Netherlands will kick off? It's actually something that should be on the table.
Our fisheries should not be on the table. They are our sovereign waters and they should be protected as that. And our fishermen should be allowed to fish our waters and access provided as and when the British decide, but not out of any compulsion. And it's a part of so much of this negotiation, as I see it, that there are tactics going on each side. Certain issues are being blown out of all proportion of how important they really are, and others are being ignored because they're less headline worthy. And I think what we have got to make sure that we're not sucked into a state where we think the EU has to get its own way because we're under threat. We've got to stand up for ourselves. We've got to believe in ourselves. I think we've got a government now at last that actually has belief in our country. And that is the tone that has changed so strongly in our negotiations with the EU. And it's standing up for ourselves on fisheries, on manufacturing, on the city, on every single area of trade with the EU. If we stand up for ourselves and fight for our corner, then we will achieve much greater success than we would if we kowtow. Yeah. If you look at what Liz Truss has said on the global trade agreement, UK GT, again, it's showing a belief in our country, but also a belief in trade. And if you believe in both those things, then you can do great things. And unilateral free trade, it provides an economic boon to the country that does it.
Yes, because right now both sides are clashing again with David Frost and Barnier. And it's difficult to predict when it comes to these sort of things, but do you think it's likely that we actually would get a trade deal by the end of December, or is it going to be a temporary WTO situation until the EU comes back again, or?
How it pans out, I don't, as I have been saying many times over the since 2016 when we had this before the referendum, I didn't know what the result would be, and I haven't known how things will play out since. I think few people would have predicted the last 3-4 years. The important thing is that we leave on time, we leave on our own terms. WTO is nothing to be afraid of. Being tied into a protectionist bloc in which we have no say is a much greater threat to our country than anything the World Trade Organization allows to go on.
Yeah, because you mentioned protection, and to be fair, with the European Union, it's not just trade when they're protectionist about. They have this union, defense union idea, that kind of the so-called EU army stuff, which some people say will undermine NATO. Some people just say it's unnecessary. Firstly, is it a good idea? Also, because there are a lot of talks that the UK might be involved in that, even without being a member. What's happening there?
Well, my personal view is the EU is not going to manage to pull anything together.
Not easy, is it?
Substance at all. They don't have countries with rigorous military backgrounds to provide the structures and technology and manpower to put together a decent force, but they also don't have the political will. And that's the really crucial bit. We can see their economies are falling to pieces, that corona has hit every country in the whole world, but that includes the EU. And the fight between the German Supreme Court and the EU over the balance of legality and who has the competency to rule on such things is not only going to clash on the euro, it's going to clash on military defense as well. I think we should have nothing to do with it. That, as you say, we've got NATO, we've got Five Eyes for intelligence. We should stick to the structures that work, the structures in which we still have our own forces and a separate control over the defense of our nation. Yeah,
I think this is a good point, because there are a lot of people in this area who are concerned about the possibility of it, but also there are a lot of defense experts who, as you said, say that it's not going to happen because there are a number of issues. As you said, Germany are already having problems with the central bank, and Italy and Spain are kicking off with other issues, financial support. The EU27 would not be fully united behind anything like this. I know Germany and countries like that are pushing for this idea, but I don't think it's actually going to happen. It's not easy to organize a union like that, just like, randomly. But that's where we are.
Yeah, I think it is fundamentally doomed to failure if they respect the democracy and the sovereignty of any of their nation states. And if they don't, then the EU is doomed to failure itself.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I want to say massive thank you again for joining today's show. Any last few words, maybe about the new life of lockdown?
Everyone stay safe. We need to all play our part in making sure that the country is safe and that is controlled, if not eradicated. But also try and enjoy the nice weather if you possibly can, because this has been a long haul. A lot of people are finding it very tough. I know that people who are there on their own.
It's probably easier for you because you're
are struggling with the isolation. And so we need to pull together as a nation and do more of this, more chatting.
Brilliant. Well, great. Thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you soon in person.
Thanks. Take care.